Good morning, students. So, in our last class, we discussed regarding the introduction part of this chapter, which is The Big Fish by N.P. Hafiz Muhammad. So, today we had to focus on from page number 27 onwards in the textbook. So, about the author. N.P. Hafiz Muhammad was born in 1956 in Calicut. He is a multifaceted genius, a sociologist, writer, illustrator, corporate trainer, and family counselor. His grandmother, N.P. Abu Sahib, who was a freedom fighter, and father N.P. Muhammad, who was a well-known Malayalam writer and former president of Kerala Sahitya Academy, were very influential in his childhood. He completed his post-graduation from Kerala University in Sociology and MPhil from Bangalore University. Hafiz Muhammad did his PhD from the University of Calicut on the topic Matrilocal Mapila Muslims of Malabar. He was awarded the Fulbright Scholarship for American Studies in Boston College, USA, and he also owns a postgraduate diploma in counseling and guidance and postgraduate diploma in mass communication and journalism. He is also the fifth graduate in India in Team Center Interaction, which is the TCI, from Ruth Cohen Institute, Switzerland. He taught sociology in Farouk College since 1981 and retired as HOD from there in 2011. Now, he is working as the head of the Department of Sociology at University of Calicut, and he has worked as the editor of the Malayalam publication and of Vartamanam Daily. He was also associated with Suraksha, a de-addiction center, as honorary director from 1990 to 2002 and was a class trustee for the General Service Organization of Alcoholics Anonymous, India. Then, Hafiz Muhammad works include the novel Espathinaayiram in 2018 and 5 collections of short stories, 10 books for children, and 8 collections of essays, all in Malayalam. Some of his major works are translated into English and a few other regional languages. He has received many awards, including the Kendra Sahitya Akademi Award for Children's Literature, the Edasheri Award for Short Story Collection, the State Sahitya Akademi Award for Children's Literature, and he was also honored with the Best Teacher Award from the University of Calicut and also the Best Social Worker Award from ADIC India. So these are the details regarding the author in the textbook point of view. So here we had to focus on the author's details and also the major works by the author. The major works of the author, which includes the Espadanayaram in 2018 and 5 collections of short stories, 10 books for children, and 8 collections of essays, all in Malayalam. And also, some of his major works were translated into English and a few other regional languages. And regarding the awards, he has received many awards, including the Kendra Sahitya Academy Award for the Children's Literature, then the Edasheri Award for Short Story Collection, and the State Sahitya Academy Award for Children's Literature. So these are the major awards that we had to focus on, and also he was honored with the Best Teacher Award from the University of Calicut. So this is also very important regarding the author, and the Best Social Worker Award from the ADIC India. So these are some important details that we had to keep in mind regarding the author's details of this chapter, who is the N.P. Hafiz Muhammad. And the chapter that we had to focus on is the Big Fish by N.P. Hafiz Muhammad. So regarding the introduction part of this chapter, from page number 27 onwards. So one of the most important changes of the late 20th century India was the implementation of the new economic policy, which is the NEP. So the NEP is one of the most important topic that we had to keep in mind regarding this chapter, which is the new economic policy. The policy, which consisted of globalization, liberalization, and privatization, was ostensibly aiming at the smooth running of goods and services between the countries and thus facilitating a fair distribution of resources and a platform of equality. So here we had focus on what is this economic policy, which is the NEP. So this policy, which consisted of globalization and the liberalization and also the privatizations. So these are the three important topics that we had to focus on under this new economic policy. And the aim of this NEP was at the smooth running of goods and services between the countries and thus facilitating a fair distribution of resources and a platform of equality. So regarding the NEP, which is the new economic policy, this policy, which consisted of globalization, liberalization, and privatization, was ostensibly aiming at the smooth running of goods and services between the countries and thus facilitating a fair distribution of resources and a platform of equality. However, what had actually happened was almost an antithesis of its spokesman's arguments. The small scale farmers and the technologically unrefined small scale industrialists were completely obliterated by the new movement, where the advantage of the open door policy always went to the rich and established the multinational corporations and acted as a foundation for the new imperialism. So, regarding this new economic policy, especially regarding the globalization, all these kinds of policies it acted as a foundation for the new imperialism. So, which means that concentrating on the only on the developed countries. So this means that the MNC, which means the multinational corporation, and also a kind of new imperialism. So basically, here we had to focus on how the MNC as well as this kind of new imperialism it affected the life of the common man. And also, the small scale producers and farmers mostly had to abandon their involvement in agriculture or industry due to lack of subsidy or inefficiency to compete with the. So this signifies that how the small scale producers and farmers they faced all these kinds of issues. So basically, the small scale producers and farmers mostly had to abandon their involvement in agriculture or industry due to the lack of subsidy or inefficiency to compete with the big guns. So here the big guns signifies the multinational corporations and also they acted like the new imperialists. So this is about the NEP and also regarding the MNC in which how all these things were affected the common man's life. So basically here the small scale producers and the farmers mostly had to abandon their involvement in agriculture or industry due to the lack of subsidy and or the inefficiency to compete with the big guns. So basically here we had focused on two important factors. The first one is that due to the lack of subsidy and also the inefficiency to compete with the big guns. So here we had focused on this chapter which is the big fish. So the big fish is the translation of the short story which is entitled as ചെറിയ മീനുകളും വലിയ മത്സ്യവും. And this portrays how this new economic policy affects the life of the ordinary people. So this is very important regarding this chapter in which how these new economic policies it affected the life of the ordinary people. And this short story is a perfect example to explain the secret and hegemonic workings of globalization. As elucidated by the author, the globalization offers new prospects to the third world underprivileged people, but it in turn destroys their traditional systems and ways of life. Finally, being carried away by the new prospects of the new imperialism, which alike exploit their despair and greed, they become nowhere men or non existent beings of the global scenario. So this signifies how the globalization it offers the new prospects to the third world underprivileged people and also at the same time in turn it destroys their traditional systems and way of life. So this is the reality in which how globalization affected the ordinary man, the life of the ordinary man. So എപ്രകാരമാണ് ഗ്ലോബലൈസേഷൻ സാധാ ഒരു മനുഷ്യൻ്റെ അവരുടെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ എങ്ങനെയാണിത് എഫക്റ്റ് ചെയ്തത് എന്നതിനെ പറ്റിയാണ് നമുക്കിവിടെ നോക്കാനുള്ളത്. So basically, as elucidated by the author, globalization offers new prospects to the third world underprivileged people, but it in turn destroys their traditional system and the way of life. Regarding the metaphor of the fish, it is a very original and competent one to explain the traps and tricks of globalization. So this is very important regarding this chapter in which the metaphor of the fish is a very original and competent one to explain the traps and tricks of globalization. So here the big fish it signifies the traps and tricks of globalization. So this is very important regarding this title of the story. And also this story is written in a very mundane and local dialect. Each of its lines speaks for volumes. And the author is very successful in creating the right emotional aura along with the thematic focus. It will leave any reader of it in a moment of shock and subsequent whirlwind of thoughts at the conclusion. So here, this story is translated into English by Dr. K.M. Sharif, the head of the Department of English, University of Calicut, and one of the most renowned translators in Kerala today. The translator was taken maximum care in retaining the mood and local color of the story and making it an equally enriching literary experience as the original one. So here we have to focus on regarding this chapter itself. So basically regarding the metaphor of the fish, it is a very original and competent one to explain the traps and tricks of globalization, and also the story is written in a very mundane and local dialect, which means that this is a translated version of the story and each of its lines speaks for volumes. And also the author is very successful in creating the right emotional aura along with the thematic focus. It will leave any reader of it in a moment of shock and a subsequent whirlwind of thoughts at the conclusion. So that's regarding the introduction part of the story, and also this story is translated into English by Dr. K.M. Sharif. So now we had to focus on the outline of this story. So basically, the protagonist of the story is Alison Gutti, who owns a pond and has a preoccupation of chatting and feeding the little fishes in the pond. He is quite happy as he enjoyed what he did. One day, an agent wearing a hat with the stars approaches him and explains the possibilities and profits of fish farming and suggests him to be wise. Mariam, his ambitious wife, finds it more interesting and hopes that this new plan will definitely help her family to overcome their financial crisis. Finally, after plenty of persuasion, the agent wins to convince his plan, and Alsanguti decides to go on with the new plan of joining the fish growing collective. Then after that, he cleans and disinfects the pond and put big fish in the pond. Slowly, he finds that the small fishes are eaten up by the big fish, and also the big fish is getting fatter by eating the small fishes. And Alsanguti gets disturbed by this act and worries about small fishes to which he has an affection and love. Then he slowly realizes that the big fish turns as a monster and engulfs all the little fishes remaining in the pond. The image of the big fish with its mouth terrifies him, and he feels that he is being dragged into the depth of the water. And actually, the big fish in this story, it symbolizes the multinational companies who came to India after the implementation of the new economic policy in 1991. So basically, the big fish, it symbolizes the MNC, which means the multinational companies who came to India after the implementation of new economic policy in 1991. Then the metaphor of the fish is a very original and competent one to explain the traps and tricks of globalization. So we already discussed regarding that, in which the metaphor of the fish, it signifies to explain the traps and tricks of globalization. Then the story exposes the influence of globalization in the lifestyle and also in the food habit of the natives, and shows how the critics of globalization are treated by the state and the police. Though a translation, the story Big Fish successfully retains all the traces of its localness along with its serious thematic focus. So that's regarding the outline of the story. So basically, this story is about the globalization and how it affected the life of the ordinary people. So basically ഇവിടെ പറയുന്നത് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ഫിഷ് ഫാമിങ്ങിനെ പറ്റിയാണ്. സോ ഫിഷ് ഫാമിങ്ങിൽ ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റഡ് ആയ ഈ ഒരു പ്രൊട്ടാഗണിസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് ദി സ്റ്റോറി who is Alison Goody later realizes the traps and tricks of this globalization through the fish farming and also the big fish. It signifies the MNC, which means the multinational companies, and also it gives a clear idea regarding the traps and tricks of the globalization. So that's regarding the quick overview regarding this chapter. So now we had to focus on some important terms in this chapter. So the first one is regarding the globalization. So what is globalization? So the definition of the globalization is that a process by which the national and regional economies, societies and cultures have become integrated through the global network of trade, communication, immigration and transportation. So basically it is a process by which the national and regional economies, societies and cultures have become integrated through the global network of trade. So the first one is regarding the global network of trade. Secondly, the communication. Third one is the immigration, and also the final one is the transportation. So the globalization means all the combination of all these kinds of aspects. The first one is the global network of trade. Secondly, the communication. Third one is the immigration, and finally the transportation. So that's regarding the globalization. So basically it is a process by which national and regional economies, societies and cultures have become integrated ഒരുമിച്ച് കൂടുന്ന ഒരു അവസ്ഥ through the global network of trade, communication, immigration and transportation. Now we had focus on the term preoccupation. So the preoccupation means absorption of the attention or intellect. So the preoccupation means absorption of the attention or intellect. Then regarding the MNCs, which means the multinational companies, and also a multinational company is one which
incorporated in one country but whose operations extend beyond the home country and which carries on business in other countries in addition to the home country. So basically it means that it extends beyond the home country and which carries on business in other countries in addition to the home country. So ഒരു ഹോം കൺട്രിയിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു കൺട്രിയിലുള്ള ഒരു കമ്പനി മറ്റു പല രാജ്യങ്ങളുമായിട്ട് നടക്കുന്ന ഒരു കോപ്പറേഷൻ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവർ തമ്മിലുള്ള നടക്കുന്ന ഒരു കച്ചവടമാണ് ഈ മൾട്ടിനാഷണൽ കമ്പനീസുമായിട്ട് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ശ്രദ്ധിക്കേണ്ടത്. സോ ബേസിക്കലി ദേ ആർ ഇൻകോർപ്പറേറ്റഡ് ഇൻ വൺ കൺട്രി ബട്ട് ഹൂസ് ഓപ്പറേഷൻ എക്സ്റ്റെൻഡ് ബിയോണ്ട് ദി ഹോം കൺട്രി വിച്ച് ക്യാരീസ് ഓൺ ബിസിനസ് ഇൻ അതർ കൺട്രീസ് ഇൻ അഡീഷൻ ടു ദി ഹോം കൺട്രി. സോ ഒരു കൺട്രിയിൽ ഒറിജിനേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന സംഭവങ്ങൾ പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് അത് വേറൊരു രാജ്യത്തിലേക്ക് മാറുന്ന ഒരു അവസ്ഥയാണ് ഇവിടെ MNC എന്ന കോൺസെപ്റ്റിൽ പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ശ്രദ്ധിക്കേണ്ടത്. സോ ബേസിക്കലി ഹിയർ വി ഹാവ് ടു ഫോക്കസ് ഓൺ ദി ഗ്ലോബലൈസേഷൻ ആൻഡ് MNC based on this chapter. So that's regarding some important terms in this chapter. So today we discussed regarding the outline of this chapter and also regarding the introduction part of this chapter from the textbook point of view. So that's for today. Thank you. Happy learning.